Mtu atabasamu ghafla, na pia mawazo mema huzifanya hali zitabasamu mbele yako ghafla. Hali ngumu zikawa nyepesi, hali tete zikatamanika. Ila unaponuna pia hali zinanuna. Hebu jifunze kutabasamu.
Kupata sikiza tune ya tabasamu ni bure. Bonyeza *811 *965 *811 *965
Because we are Dynasty! We accept your challenge, but there's one stipulation. This match is going to be a ladder match. It's the most dangerous, the most deadly style of match in wrestling. I think that it's time that we give Brian Pillman Jr. the chance to shine. I want to give him this opportunity to be in this match.
I'll make the Hart family proud, and I'll make my father proud.
On My Culture this Friday, get to know more about Shilembe, a ceremony that ropes in bullfighters in honor of a dead hero or warrior in Western Kenya.
Kwani unatumia mapua kusikia? Si nimetoka kukwambia hiyo saa hii tu. Are you sure you did not go extremely out of your way? I mean, you don't even look familiar. This is not your style.
Julia, why do you look like you have swallowed a tablespoon of yeast?
And why do you look like them? Can I keep my yeast?
Are you hungry? You look angry.
You see that Mr. Free? He has been avenging me the whole week and my stepfather is on my case.
What is your biggest problem?
My biggest problem is that Daira Bank. She has broken my family into tiny pieces.
That is your family's problem. I am asking about how you, Fala. What is your biggest problem?
And Auntie Bella, where did you get all this money from?
Mr. Free, I have my own ways.
A very good morning to you. Thank you very much for making time to join us here on KBC Channel 1. You're in time for BizCheck. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, today we have quite a lot lined up for you, including a conversation on matters food security and specifically food waste management. How much food are you wasting in your house? Why are you not managing the food that you have better? And just what the numbers look like. A lot of food is going to waste while many people are hungry. So we shall be having that conversation in a bit. But first, we want to take you to the IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, is appearing before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the National Assembly, and they are appraising the committee on their level of preparedness for the general elections. The DPP Nurdin Haji is speaking currently. Let's listen into that.
As I conclude, allow me to register my utmost gratitude to the Kenyan section of the International Commission of Jurists for partnering with the ODPP in this important exercise. I also thank you individually and collectively for honoring our invitation and coming here. It goes a long way to show that we are all willing to cooperate, coordinate, and work together to ensure that we have a free and fair election process in Kenya. Finally, I wish to thank the committee headed by Mr. Kemo for coming up with this compendium. I also wish to reiterate the ODPP's commitment to fair, credible, and peaceful elections, and we look forward to fruitful and candid deliberations. Thank you all, and God bless you.
for your remarks.
That is the DPP there speaking at the National Assembly, where the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, is appearing before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee to just appraise on the preparedness of the general elections. Remember, the elections are happening on the 9th of August this year, and of course IEBC is getting ready to ensure that they go smoothly there. That is part of what we have for you today. The conversation we shall be having about food security, we'll be having it with Winnie Yegon. She is a food systems analyst at FAO, at the Food Agriculture Organization, as well as Ahmed Abdi at RRDO. He's the executive director, and Pavin Gala, the regional director of Oxfam East Africa. And before we get into that conversation, the prices of food have been soaring higher, and what was flagged yesterday was the cost of milk that is supposed to go even higher in the next few weeks. Let's just get that piece before we delve into the conversation.
But what is the government doing to mitigate these harsh conditions? The prices of animal feed have gone up by more than 30% in the last year on account of expensive corn, minerals and soybeans. This has been occasioned by the high demand for commodities on the global market. These have seen the cost of the white gold jump from a low of 45 shillings in June last year to the current 65 shillings for a 500 milliliter packet of milk.
I'm kind of surprised na ile life tunaishi kwa sababu kila kitu increase. Like for now, asubuhi si lazima sasa nikunywe chai.
The Kenya Dairy Board says the upward pressure on prices is expected to remain in the coming months as processors are not getting enough volumes from farmers due to the ongoing drought. The situation is expected to worsen since most processors do not have stocks of powdered milk, which they normally reconstitute into fresh milk when there is a shortage. A spot check by KBC indicates that all leading processors have adjusted their prices between 5 shillings and 7 shillings for a 500 milliliter packet of fresh and long life brands, dealing consumers major blow.
Farmers wamereduce bei ya chakula ya mifugo so that we can punguza bei ya maziwa kwetu, kwa sababu unaona it starts from the ground. Kama kwa ground maziwa iko na bei ya juu, pia sisi kwetu by the time inatufikia na bei ya juu, so lazima tuuze na bei ya juu pia.
The automated milk vending machines are currently selling the commodity for 70 shillings a litre from 65 shillings 2 weeks ago.
Maziwa imekuwa too expensive. It's unbearable. So kindly, serikali yetu tafadhali, mtusaidie, mtupunguzie bei ya vitu chini.
However, there is hope that the expected rains will reverse the current trend.
Well, that story sets the environment for us to have this conversation now on matters food security. Remember that there is a report that was released by Oxfam, and it says that 28 million people in East Africa are at risk of extreme hunger if the rains fail this March. That conversation is about to start, and in studio we have Winnie Yegon. She is the food systems analyst at the Food Agriculture Organization, and Ahmed Abdi, in Kenya, as much as millions are facing hunger, there is millions of food that is going to waste every year. Just to give us some statistics, according to UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, nearly half of all fruit and vegetables produced globally each year are wasted. Coming to Kenya, according to FAO, the organization that you work for, in East Africa, economic losses in the dairy sector alone average $90 million. In Kenya, where we are, 95 million liters of milk, worth $22.4 million are lost annually. These are quite some numbers in terms of what is there. The food is there, but there are people who are hungry. Where is the disconnect, Abdi?
You find even when we have the emergency situation, you see the international community coming with support and food coming from other parts of the country. And yet, our own farmers have produced food that they are not able to sell to some other parts of the country. So this distribution between the areas that are producing food in excess and the areas that need to consume this food, that distribution system really needs to be worked. And this is something that the government can partner with humanitarian organizations, with development partners, so that we have proper distribution. Where food is produced in one part of the country, milk is produced, we should be able to really have this milk and these cereals taken to the other parts of the country at affordable prices, so that even when we have emergency, we are able to give that support that is needed to the ASAL counties in good time.
In good time.
Yes.
Yes. Winnie, you deal with this on a daily basis. Just give us your experience in the field and how people are managing food.
When it comes to food, I usually am an advocate of managing the food we have before we start talking of increasing our production, increasing our productivity. Because the thinking is, if we can't manage the food we have at the moment, increasing productivity will not automatically equate to food and nutrition security. Just as Abdi has mentioned, we have inefficiencies within the value chain, because for the longest time within the agricultural sector, to address food and nutrition security, we have focused on the farm. But the question we are now asking ourselves is, what do we do with the food once it is ready? Because I don't think there is any farmer who produces the food to stay in the farm. We produce the food to go to the consumers. So the disconnect between the production end and the other actions along the value chain are what we need to start addressing. And that is what, as FAO, we are currently doing through the food systems approach. The food systems approach brings in different actors, because the more we analyzed the current situation when it comes to food and nutrition security, the more we realize that we can't address it alone as experts within the agricultural sector. Because we need, especially for things such as distribution, we need to work with people from infrastructure so that they can construct the roads. We need markets. We need digital tools that will link the consumers to the markets, or even just the value chain actors across the nodes. So that is what we are now advocating for: food systems approach, synergies and collaborations within partners and within the private sector, as well as the government, for all those who are involved in the food system. Because addressing food and nutrition security is not a one-person's job.
Of course, it's not a one-person's job. Every sector and stakeholders, they need to come together.
Yes.
Abdi, she has mentioned the issue of food getting to the consumers. Now, when this food is produced, there is the issue of infrastructure. There is also post-harvest losses that are very high in this country. So what can be done once the food is produced? What can be done?
Of course, I have mentioned very critical institutions.
Yes.
Like the Kenya National Cereals and Produce Board, that should play a proper role in terms of the ability to have this food available, at affordable prices, so that it is easier for people to access food. That is one. Number two is infrastructure. The post-harvest losses. We need to have proper storage. Proper food storage systems. And this should be in each county. If we have the proper food storage systems in all the 47 counties, then we are going to minimize post-harvest losses, and then we have food available as and when it is needed, especially during the dry spells and in the ASAL counties. So food storage is addressing that in all the counties in Kenya is very important. Then access to markets is very important. So infrastructure, especially in the food producing areas, and then market. So the infrastructure, so that we're able to move food from one place to another cheaply, the transportation system, all those, I think, need to be worked on. Yes.
Winnie?
I agree with him, and just to shed more light on the markets, when we talk of access to markets, it's not just the physical market, because we know there are various markets as you drive along the roads of Kenya. There are various markets. But as you talk to the farmers, the challenge sometimes is information, where the markets are. So, you find that some of the farmers don't have information on where the markets are. Most of them are used to selling within the local markets. However, the prices probably in 2 towns, 3 towns away from where they are is higher. Recently, we did a study in Taita Taveta, talking to the banana producing farmers. At that time, there were very high losses for bananas. Approximately 30 to 40% of bananas were going to waste. In extreme cases, it was higher than 50%. And the reason they were attributing to these high levels of losses was they all met. The farmers that do rain production and the farmers that do irrigation met in the market at the same time. So the market could not take all these bananas. And then in other regions of the country, the production of bananas was also high. So most of them sent their bananas to Mombasa, but Mombasa was not able to accommodate all this production. So you find the cost of these bananas really dropped. So it didn't make economic sense for the farmer to harvest the bananas, transport it to the farm, and not make a profit, because at that time a whole bunch of bananas, the whole thing was going for 150 shillings. And then 2 months down the line, we have, we are struggling to deal with the prices of commodities. So in addition to the markets, it's also a coordination issue of information, how to link the production areas to the areas of scarcity, as well as he also touched on storage. And storage comes with a lot of aspects when it comes to handling. We have had so many cases of maize being affected by aflatoxin. And some of these things are avoidable because we try and, as FAO, we try and train our farmers to adopt good agricultural practices, which also cover things such as post-harvest management, because for the food to stay long in the storage facilities, a lot of it goes into it before you even actually store the food. So it needs to come in as a package, both the technical aspects of how to manage the food safety aspects, how to dry your produce, how to package it well using the hermetic bags, and then now come in the people that set up the storage facilities to keep them. But it doesn't end there. We still need to link the storage facilities to the end consumer, because we cannot store food indefinitely. So we need to close the loop in the value chain so that it's not a linear approach, but it's rather a circular approach. Yes.
Part of the technology used in ensuring that food has a longer shelf life is, of course, value addition.
Yes.
In Kenya, value addition is, especially in the agriculture sector, is still very low, and we are exporting a lot of raw materials, and importing the finished goods. So what role can the manufacturing sector play in ensuring that we have enough food for longer, Abdi?
I think we need to scale up when it comes to manufacturing and value addition. And I know this is one of the 4 key agendas of the government. But in terms of food processing, value addition, I think we are not yet there. So this is one area that if it is handled well, then we are going to handle the issue of food security and minimize hunger. If I'll give you an example. Honey, for example, is something that is, even when you go to the asal areas, that it is produced actually in large quantities. But in terms of value addition, that aspect is lacking. So when it comes to manufacturing, we should not just be looking at large-scale manufacturing, but even the small farmer, we should be doing value addition. Small-scale cottage industries should be available so that we are able to do value addition at the farm produce level.
And Winnie, how are you working with the farmers? As he's rightly put, it starts right there with the farmer. How are you working with the farmers on that?
As FAO, we have it in twofold. We work with the farmers through building their technical capacities on value addition, because most of the farmers we work with at the county level and also through the national government is to build their capacities on value addition, local level processing. So things such as drying of fruits and vegetables, making of jam, and this has really helped. We have a few testimonials from our farmers, and the impact is really felt on the ground, because you find it in areas such as Kitui, Makueni. During the rainy season, they have bumper harvests when it comes to things such as cowpeas. But when the rains go, they don't have their vegetables. But now, through capacity building them on drying of vegetables, we ensure that when it comes to nutrition and also economic viability, we stretch what they are able to produce during the rainy season. So we have that going on, and we also link our smallholder producers to markets, both local and international. So we have cases where we build their capacities to meet the needs, the requirements to now export some of the produce. We work with the private sector to link our farmers to the private sector to be their suppliers of some of the produce they have. So it is a double, we try and address it from both ends. Yes.
Right. Abdi, let's talk about the hunger situation now in the ASAL region in Kenya. With 28 million people in the East African region facing extreme hunger. In Kenya, it's a bit worse because the global food prices, we already had a battered economy, and then the rains, if the rains don't come, it will be really bad. So what should be done? What can be done in the immediate future to at least salvage the situation?
Thank you very much for that question. The time to act is now. We already have 3.5 million people who are food insecure in the ASAL counties alone. And 1 million of that, they're already in the emergency stage. We are talking about a situation where the water trekking distances have increased between 120 to 150%. We are talking about a situation where livestock prices have really come down because of the livestock body condition. We have a situation where milk production has decreased by 80%. We have a situation where 90% of the service water have dried up. We have a situation where there is over-concentration of livestock in boreholes and frequent breakdowns of these boreholes. So really we are in a very dire situation when it comes to the ASAL counties. The worst affected counties right now are Turkana, Samburu, Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, and Garissa. These are the worst affected counties. So the ASAL humanitarian network is already responding. The ASAL humanitarian network is a network of local and national NGOs, 30 of them. This network is supported by organizations like Oxfam in terms of capacity building and in terms of ensuring that the response we have to the emergencies we have is led by local organizations. So these organizations, international organizations like Oxfam, are behind supporting local organizations so that local organizations can take the lead in responding. We are calling upon the government to scale up response, because in the ASAL counties right now we are talking about response. If you don't respond, then we are going to have, we are already having, in these ASAL counties we have 1.5 million livestock deaths. Soon we may hear human deaths. So we need to scale up the response. The ASAL humanitarian network, supported by Oxfam, are currently doing cash transfers in 8 of the ASAL counties, using this network of local and international organizations, because they understand the people better and they are in those areas, actively operating in those areas. So international organizations like ACTED, Oxfam, are supporting in terms of, number one, cash transfers, because when you have the cash, you're able to buy, as opposed to when you have food. If you are given one type of food, then you will need some other types of food. So the cash transfer is something that is happening as an emergency response, so that they're able to buy food, and especially nutritious food that they need at this time, because children are most affected. The malnutrition levels are very high. So we need that response. We need to scale up the response so that we're able to reach. Now we have reached 7,500 households at the moment. Our plan was by this month we should have reached 15,000 households. That was our plan. So we need to scale up this response, and the government also needs to come up in a big way, so that we don't have a situation where there is starvation or people are dying because of the current drought situation we have in these ASAL counties.
Yes. That report by Oxfam said that there are concerns that aid is not going to come in as much as it used to, because currently all eyes are in Ukraine and Russia, in Ukraine, where the Ukraine-Russia war is going on.
Yes.
So how is this going to impact a response to the situation?
We always have this situation where when you have a big event or big emergency happen in some other parts of the world, then some emergencies tend to be forgotten.
Yes.
So we are calling upon the international community to really not forget what is happening right now in Kenya, especially in the ASAL counties. But I think the primary responsibility is the government. The government must also step in and fill some of these gaps that are existing at the moment. So we need the government to come in a big way, because the situation really is very, very dire. Yes.
The situation is very dire. Winnie, when we spoke about, of course, there's the Ukraine crisis, which is causing a spike in food prices. So this is the time, if there was a time that people should manage their food better, it's now, right?
Yes.
So how can they do that?
We have it at different levels. So everyone is responsible for food waste management at the different nodes of the value chain. So at the production end, I would say market information systems, market-led production, so that the farmers ensure that they're producing food to meet a certain market, which is something we have already begun building capacity for our farmers. But also Food waste is more on the lower ends of on the downstream side of the value chain. When we talk of production, processing, and transport, that we refer to as food losses. But when you talk of retail and consumers, that is where we talk of food waste. So now to address food waste, you and I play a very big role because we are, in addition to retail, we are the largest contributors of food waste. According to a report done by UNEP, in Kenya, we waste approximately 100 kilos of food a year per person. UNEP is the custodian of the food waste index, and FAO is the custodian of, or rather manages the indicator for food losses. So we do it together. So looking at the high levels of waste, I'm thinking 100 kilos of food a year, and Abdi here is talking of the high levels of food insecurity. Those two don't match. As a country, we need to sit down together. As partners, as stakeholders, we need to sit down together to really see where the dislink is, because we can't have this conversation over and over and over. We need to find a solution that will really bring these two total extremes together. So at the household level, I would encourage people to plan better for their food, because when we translate food waste to economic terms, we did a report recently, and it was coming to approximately 72 billion shillings of food wasted every year, and that is extrapolated value. Bananas alone were coming to around 2 billion, and tomatoes 18 billion. That is the monetary value. But when you do the monetary value, we look at the cost of production of that commodity, as well as the opportunity cost of that commodity if the produce was to be sold. So looking at this amount of money that we are asking for to go into relief, and then looking at the amount of money that we are wasting out of food, if we manage our food better, we'll be able to feed ourselves. So at the consumer level, it is basic things. How to manage your leftovers. I'm a preacher of leftovers management. There are so many ways you can recook your vegetables. We recently had a campaign during the World Food Day on how at the household level we can manage our food better. Because I'm sure when you go to the market, you buy things such as broccoli or French beans, and the next time you realize you have broccoli in your fridge, it is black. You can't use it again. So managing your kitchen is a first step to go, but then again, it's a ripple effect. It is everyone along the value chain that has a role to play. The transporters, they need to package the food better. You see how we usually transport our tomatoes, our fruits and vegetables. By the time the food is getting to the market, probably 20% of it is damaged, or even 10%. And 10% of a lorry carrying 2,000 heads of cabbage is 200 heads of cabbage. That's enough to feed a school for several meals. So, we need to see how we balance these two things. Yes.
Abdi, we keep talking about the issue of food insecurity in Kenya for the longest time. What long-term solutions are on the table currently?
One is irrigation. Kenya has we have been dependent on rain-fed agriculture. We need to do irrigation farming, large scale. And if you go to all those ASAL counties, which are food insecure, one time we have drought, next we have floods. Floods also wash away properties. Livestock are washed away by floods, So we need to harvest these waters. If these waters are harvested, then we can do irrigation farming, even in the ASAL counties. So the long term is the government really to invest in harvesting flood waters, so that we can have irrigation, even in the ASAL, irrigation farming, even in the ASAL counties. So this country can be food secure if we really harvest the flood waters that destroy property, that also cause hunger. You have the drought and then you have the floods. So we need to harvest this so that we have mega dams in all those areas that are prone to flooding, so that we can do irrigation farming. Yes.
A large percentage of Kenya's agriculture, most farms, I mean, we are a smallholder farmer agriculture sector, so to say. Most of them are rain-fed. You know, we depend a lot on the rain, and according to Oxfam, the risk of the rains not coming already puts, 28 million people in East Africa. You say 3.5 million, 1 million is already dire, in a dire situation. So how can we move away from the rain-fed agriculture? And how can we ensure that our farmers are producing, say, all year round, so that we can be food secure? I'll start with you, Winnie.
We first need to start with capacity building, because some of these technologies are the technologies are there, but sometimes our farmers don't have access to some of these technologies. Technologies that are climate resilient, climate smart agriculture technologies. And through FAO, in partnership with the government, we have been training farmers to adopt some of these climate smart agriculture technologies, just to ensure that their productivity is boosted, even in the face of the shocks when it comes to climate. I would give an example. Even in one of these ASOL counties in Turkana, we have been working a lot with the residents of the Kalobeye settlement to boost their productivity, to even diversify their production away from just livestock to even horticultural crops. So we just recently launched the groundnut strategy in Turkana, and this will go a long way into boosting the livelihoods, the economic livelihoods of the people. Like he said, we need to give them the money, but the money, in addition to the relief programs, you need to think of sustainable ways to ensure that the people are able to stand on their own as well. So those are some of the ways we have supported the SMEs in terms of transferring these technologies to our farmers, so that they're able to improve on their production and their productivity, as well as link them now to the final market. As well as, in addition to that, we also try and through behavior change communication, because some of these things are not, you can't come in and change someone's dietary patterns overnight. People are used to eating certain commodities, but through behavior change communication, we train them how to produce these commodities, the vegetables, the African indigenous vegetables, which do well in some of these arid and semi-arid areas. Water harvesting techniques, how to conserve your water, how to use some urban technologies such as micro gardens that don't need too much water, don't need too much space. So those are some of the technologies we usually transfer to our beneficiaries to ensure that at the household level they are able to boost their incomes, as well as address their nutrition needs. Yes.
Very important pointers there. Abdi, do you have something to add to that?
No.
No? Okay. So you're in agreement, eh?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
All right. Remember, we are having this conversation about food waste management as well as hunger management in Kenya. And we're with Winnie Yegon. She is a food systems analyst at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, as well as Ahmed Abdi, the executive director of the Relief, Reconstruction and Development Organization. Now, remember that we are online at Betty Kiptum on Twitter and at KBC Channel 1. Share your views, what you think about the prices of food currently, and just how they are affecting your household and your budgets. And are you managing your food well in your home, in your kitchen? Are you throwing away leftovers? How are you doing it to ensure that you are doing the best you can with what you have? This conversation continues in a little bit. We want to take a very quick break. When we come back, we shall be sampling some of your views. Stay with BizCheck.
On My Culture this Friday, get to know more about Shilembe, a ceremony that ropes in bullfighters in honor of a dead hero or warrior in Western Kenya.
Sometimes I think whether it's possible that Shannon is still alive somewhere.
What do we do now? We can't go on our honeymoon. How can you be this terrified of your father? Hey!
I miss you so much, Pinky. I miss you, do you know?
Shannon! Please.
Save my baby. Save my baby.
Did you have wine tonight? Aren't you pregnant right now? Isn't it bad to drink? If a woman is pregnant? What?
in January 2022, despite the decline in the overall rate of inflation. This is according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics Monthly Consumer Price Index. A number of Kenyans have called for a reduction in food prices and a reduction of energy costs, which will see a drop in the cost of living.
Tusinunue vitu bei gari, kwa mfano fertilizer ninunue 6,200, tena bando ya mahindi ninunue 5,500. Nikienda kuuza mahindi yangu nauza one bag 90 kg nauza 2,000. That is not fair. That is injustice.
Of major concern to the citizenry is what they say has been a silent legislature.
It is so wrong and so so dishonest for a member of parliament or a member of the Senate to be coming out here telling wananchi that the cost of living is going high. Yet they're the ones that pass the budget. They're the ones that determine how much money goes to the counties. They're the ones that determine what priorities are to be put by the national government and the county governments.
Citizens now want the legislature to act with speed in bringing in more pieces of legislation that will see relief in the pocket.
Tunajua tumebakisha muda mfupi sana wavunjilie ama hii bunge ambalo linaendelea kwa saa hii livunjwe. Tunawaomba tu warudi kwa bunge, wajaribu kuangalia mambo ambayo wanaweza fanya na miswada ambayo wanaweza pitisha ili warudishe hii maisha chini.
These sentiments come at a time when the International Monetary Fund's 2022 World Economic Outlook forecasts tough times ahead. The lender warned that the steep rise in fuel and gas prices will push inflation to levels last witnessed during the global recession in 2008.
Alan Auko's report there on food security, or on high cost of living rather, the cost of food prices going higher and higher by the day. And in studio we are having a conversation on matters of food security, food waste management and also hunger management. There is a place where there is bounty and you know, food is just being wasted, and there are people who do not have food. Winnie Yegon, food systems analyst at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Ahmed Abdi, the executive director of the Relief, Reconstruction and Development Organization, as well as Pavin Gala, the regional director of Oxfam, joining us now. Welcome, Pavin, and thank you for staying with us. Pavin, you have been listening to the conversation, and we've talked about quite a number of statistics, you know, from Oxfam about the hunger situation in East Africa as well as in Kenya. Just give us your pointers on that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, in the region, what we are seeing is that we have approximately 21 million people facing a hunger crisis, especially in Kenya, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Somalia. And we are concerned, as was mentioned by my colleague Ahmed, that with the likelihood of failed rains, that this will escalate in terms of numbers. At the regional level being 28 million, but in Kenya specifically around 3.8 million people being affected. We really are concerned in terms of some of the coping mechanisms that people are opting to take. And indeed, what we're hearing a lot when we go to the field, when we talk to our partners, is, people being stretched to their limit, whether people are selling their assets because they need the cash, whether people are opting to minimize, indeed miss meals because they're only able to target feeding maybe their children. And in some cases, extreme cases, where we are hearing stories of people marrying off their young daughters in order to be able to get money to pay for their medicine and food.
So that is quite a sad picture right now. And what is the response looking like?
Well, at the moment, the response is, I would say, minuscule compared to the needs. In Kenya, in terms of the UN flash appeal, we had a target of $139 million, and at the moment, only 11% of it has been funded. And one of the things, as was shared earlier also, is the fact that we do need to take urgent action now. We do have sad experiences, for example, in 2011, where we had a famine, and with that, in the region, we had over 250,000 people dying of hunger and starvation. And in 2017, we had, famine. But what was unique about that case was the fact that we took early action. Early action, we responded, and it helped really avert a famine-like situation. We all know, unfortunately, the reality that we're living with right now is the fact that climate crisis is meaning we have more and more of this crisis, these droughts, these floods. And in this case, in this year, what we are really hoping to do is to avert, again, a high impact catastrophe in the region. So we are really calling for early action. We are calling for resources to be able to support the communities who are at the center of this.
It's interesting that you've brought up the issue of climate change. I mean, Africa will be the first hit. I mean, it's already hitting us, and the most affected continent when it comes to climate change effects. And we already have problems. The ASAL regions facing starvation and all that. So implementation of climate smart agriculture, Winnie had mentioned a bit about that. Could you please?
Well, I think it's multiple things when you talk about climate change. On one hand, like you mentioned, the fact that the region, the continent, and especially developing countries have only contributed less than 4% of the carbon emissions. And in terms of impact, as you can clearly see, the continent, the developing countries are the ones who are suffering the brunt of it. So in that case, looking at different ways, on one hand, what we have been calling for, and also in the COP26 meeting last year, we said we need to invest resources for adaptation. We need to put a lot more in terms of repaying loss and damage faced by the countries that are really having to address the impact of this climate change. So one part of it is about climate smart agriculture. Another part of it is looking at how we diversify, livelihoods. As my colleague Ahmed mentioned, the fact that a lot of the areas that are impacted are the arid and semi-arid areas who depend a lot on rain-fed agriculture, who depend a lot on livestock in terms of forms of income. We're looking at it in terms of what else can we be doing to be able to have income for these families so that they're not dependent only on areas where they're exposed a lot to the climatic shocks. And in that case, as was mentioned earlier, looking at how we leverage, technology, whether it is in the form of early warning systems, looking at how we anticipate some of the issues that are coming up, but also adapt. I had earlier the question around water sources, and looking at potential of irrigation. One of the things we've been working with our partners is around, how do we use solar technology? We do not have a lack of solar in Kenya. So we are saying, how do we leverage technology such as this to be able to really address, the water sources, water access challenges. But also linked to that, I have to say, and in as much as we've been talking about it in terms of food management, it's also about water resource management. How are we managing that? There's multiple uses of water, multiple needs of water, whether it is in business, manufacturing, our farmers. How do we manage these water resources effectively?
Quite an important and pertinent question there. Let's talk about research. Of course, the technology technology that is being adopted in farms and increasing production and even introduction of, say, drought-resistant crops, you know, to the farmers. It all, you know, research has to be done in all these things. Research in Kenya is not very well funded, yeah? So institutions like KALRO, they keep releasing, you know, new varieties of crops every other month, you know. So what is the role of research in alleviating hunger in this country? I'll start with you, Abdi.
As you rightly said, Betty, I think mentioned a bit earlier, research is very critical, and it is really not funded well. So we need to do a lot more research, and we need to fund this research. I know of an organization in Kenya called Kenya Industrial Research Development Institute. This organization has been trying to do a lot of research when it comes to gum and resins in the Asal countries.
Talking about developing our own, my colleague Ahmed mentioned earlier about localization. How do we generate data, information locally? How do we share information locally? How do we look at opportunities to pilot, to adopt best practices locally? And so that is an area we as Oxfam really feel is important in terms of informing the kind of work that are indeed applicable in the situation. So I think that's an important bit. For us, in terms of Oxfam, we use the term evidence-based. How are we influencing the type of work that we do, whether it is in the ASAL areas, whether it is in the more rain-fed or at least accessible areas? How do we influence the type of work that we do there based on what we are seeing, what we are hearing from the communities that we work with, from the partners that we work with? So I think it's definitely in terms of interconnections, because it's always interconnected. The other thing I'd like to highlight as we talk about research is targeting special communities that are vulnerable, that are marginalized, you know, and I think in this case, for example, around women. As we talked earlier about smallholder farmers, a lot of our population of smallholder farmers is women. How are we looking at their unique needs? You know, we see the fact that on one hand, they're having to look at income generation for their families. On the other hand, they're having to look at supporting their families, taking care of their children. How do we adapt, you know, our research in terms of bringing out the unique issues they are facing to make sure that what we eventually put down as practice is informed by this kind of information?
And I like the pointers that you're bringing out. When it comes to research and understanding the technical bit of it, it of course needs people who have studied, you know, and have read and all that. So I want us to talk about agriculture in terms of most farmers we know are in the rural areas. Some of them, their education, or most of them, their education level is not that high. So there's an issue that the average farmer in Kenya is about 65 years. Yeah, and in universities, there's the courses on agriculture, they might be limited or they're not attracting as much numbers as they would want to. What can we do to encourage more people to get into the agriculture space on a very professional level? Abdi.
Okay. As we have said before, there is a disconnect between what we learn and you know, the practices out there. A lot of us, we see that we want to break away from how our parents lived, how we have lived before. So that we are saying, if it is livestock, and you have been brought up in a situation where your fees is paid, everything is done, from livestock, then you want to go to engineering. You don't want to, you know, you see that if you are, you come from a family that is basically a small farmer, then you want to go to big industry and all that. So I think in terms of our educational institutions, we need to move away from theory to practical aspects. So that you have this mentality when you go to school, you say, I want to go and improve the small scale farming that my parents are doing back at home. So I think there is need to really make our courses, the courses that we offer, to be market oriented. We need to move so that we move away from this idea that probably what is being done in the farm, you think that is poverty and you are trying to run away from that. We must inculcate a situation where we are saying what we already have, that is what I want to improve, bring technology on board. So the courses that we offer, and I think that's why the government was also talking about technical courses and technical colleges. This is, I think, what we need to expand so that we are able to, if it is farming, then we're able to improve that. If it is honey production, then this is what we need to focus on so that we can do the value addition at that local level. So I think the technical skills is what we need to improve.
Technical skills improvement.
Yes.
I shall be getting your views on the same in a little bit, but first we want to take the viewer to Eldoret, where there is a forum for development of education, sports, science and policy in Kenya. The theme is linking education, sports and ministry, and engineer Alex Tolgos is speaking currently. Let's just listen in to what is happening there in Eldoret.
And already we've been able to recruit, I think, 50 students from Elgeyo Marakwet, another 50 from Uasin Gishu. So that will give you a total of about 200 students who, I think, by end of May, they will be in Finland. The two of us, myself and my friend Mandago, we've been able to visit Tampere to check how our students are faring, and they are doing extremely well. And I want to believe that after the discussions today, we'll be able to expand this, and especially on the issue of sports. I know we've had many discussions with Farala Institute. We visited their institution. They've been able to send a team to Wasingishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, and also to Koitalel Samway for, I think, 2 or 3 times now. And I believe the outcomes of our discussions today will be able to unlock all the things that we've been able to discuss. And I want to really appreciate Koitalel Samway, because the reason why we are not doing well as counties, every time you've had people complaining that counties cannot do this, they cannot do that, is because we've not been able to cement that partnership with our research institutions, which are our universities. And there are so many things that we've tried on our own, but we've not been able to get the results, the intended results, because of lack of research. So I think moving forward, every time we have a discussion, we must have an institution of research working with us. So Koitalel have led the way. University of Eldoret, I know we've signed a lot of MOUs with them, Moi University. And I'm also happy that University of Nairobi is in the center of this. So we are ready as counties to work together, but I think more importantly, Cornelius, you need to organize one trip so that all these institutions that are here today, we can go and do benchmarking in Tampere, just to know how they work together. What is the secret behind them working as one family? Then after that, I think even the issue of sports, because I think for us, our unifying factor as the 3 counties and also the region is sports. So as NOTRIF, we have seen our urban areas quickly develop to attractive towns for investment to a large proportion from the proceeds of athletics. Yet little has been done to our sportsmen and sportswomen to secure their well-being, their talent, and also their future. However, all is not lost. Today's conference is a ray of light and hope. I'm convinced that by the end of the conference, and with the brilliant minds gathered here today, we shall have a roadmap of how best to build the capacity to our coaches with the intention of nurturing talents, the type of policies and structures needed to cushion, structure, regulate, and enhance capacity of sports in Kenya or the counties. Last but not least, the huge nexus of sports and academia, whether it's research, academic programs, sports medicine, the list is endless. So for our friends from Finland, once again, we are here want to thank you, and we are here to learn and listen from one another. And once again, we really want to appreciate the partnership and also the care that you've given to our students. I think to those of you who are here today, I think all the students that have gone to Finland, and I think yesterday the team from Finland had an opportunity to interact with their parents. And already we've seen families changing. Most of them have been able to build nice houses for their parents. And I think the most, when we first sent them, I think in a few months, when they send photos showing them driving around Tampere, the challenge now, I remember the first batch of 25 students from Elgeyo Marakwet. We were headhunting or looking for people to apply for those opportunities. But right now, we have even people applying without any. How will we be able to meet the demands from our youth? And I think more importantly, we've been talking to our students who are there that for us to learn a lot from Finland, we also want to encourage them, after they finish their studies, they need to come back home so that they can share the experiences and also be able to bring the desired change that we want in our counties. So we are happy, and I want to urge Nandi County, now that we are all champions, and request Carita, the team, that maybe before you leave, we want to see Nandi County sign an MOU with you, so that the next batch of students, we want to see them go and compete. And I think more importantly, we've just sent students to go and study nursing and other courses. We also want to see athletes who are going to study at the same time compete, so that we'll be getting reports from Finland on which county is winning more medals. Na nafikiri Chemno hapo najua Wasingishu huwa wanasema hao ndio wana receive yote. But I'm also happy because when you look at the athletes, even many of them from Nandi, they've done a lot of investments in Ite. And I've seen also athletes from Elgeyo Marakwet investing in Nandi. So all of these athletes are, and if one time there will be need to merge counties, I think Nandi, Elgeyo Marakwet and Wasingishu should be merged to be one county, so that these fights ishi hapo, we just call ourselves champions. Na kwa wenzetu, nafikiri mimi nataka kushukuru sana Cornelius, kwa sababu yeye alienda kule nje akaona opportunity na akaamua kuhakikisha kwamba watu wengine wamefaidika. Na nataka naongea hiyo kwa Kiswahili kwa sababu sitaki hao watu wetu wasikie sana. Tunajua kuna wenzetu ama kuna Kenyans wengine ambao wameenda nje na wataki watu wengine waende huko. Mtu akishaenda anaona ni yeye peke yake apone, na inakuwa hivyo. So Bwana Cornelius, sisi tunashukuru sana. Na najua hata wakati tumetuma wanafunzi wengi kule, kuna watu hawajafurahi. Tunaambiwa hata kuna wengine wanaandika mabarua wanauliza kwa nini tunaona Wakenya wengi wanaenda kule. Na hiyo nafikiri tutajua vile tutawakemea. But for today, allow me to end there, and once again thank all of us for finding time to participate in this very important discussion. Thank you, and may God bless all.
A round of applause for, to the leadership of the three counties that are where you find the majority of Kenya's champions. Thank you very much, Your Excellency Tolgos, for your remarks.
And education function there. The forum is happening in Eldoret, and it's about bringing more youth into the sports sector. And speaking about the youth here in studio, we are talking about encouraging them to join the agriculture sector. And before we went to Eldoret, there Abdi was giving us his remarks. I would like Winnie now to give us her remarks.
Thank you, Betty. And the youth, we keep on saying the youth are the future, but I would say the youth are the current, because we make up the largest proportion of our economy. So we really need to see how we bring the youth to address some of the issues we have in the food system. Because like going back to food waste is a problem as a result of inefficiencies within the food system. But when you look at some of the solutions that come into now how we transport the food, how we store the food, some of the technologies that are needed to link the end consumer with the producer, all these solutions can be addressed by the youth. So there are challenges, there are challenges in the food system, but they also present themselves as opportunities for job creation, because our youth are really facing high levels of job unemployment. So if we are able to link these challenges and gaps within the food system to the youth that need these jobs, then we will move forward. And I will go back to what Ahmed said about our training institutions. For the longest time, we have focused, and again, on production. You see, we want to train our youth to go into farming, but the solutions are not just in the farming. So in addition to making youth attracted to the agricultural sector, we need to show them that the opportunities are there beyond the farm. Because I think part of the challenge with bringing the youth into the agriculture sector is they think that by coming to the agriculture sector, they have to go to the farm, they have to dig for hours. But you have technology technologies. We have modern technologies for production that do not really need soil. We have hydroponics, we have vermiculture, we have very innovative production activities, as well as processing, value addition, and even markets. We need someone who will change our food environment and go into marketing, digital marketing of nutritious food for our people. So these are some of the opportunities that the youth can take part in. And even when you look at now at the tail end, now at the consumer level, we need someone to come out with the recipes for how we can use our leftovers at the household level. So all these things are not directly related to the farm, but they're still addressing food and nutrition security.
Yeah. Very important. Pavin?
Yeah, I think my colleagues have pretty much spoken to most of the issues. I think what I'd like to add is, in as much as we are talking about the youth involvement, the youth being part of the developing of the solutions, is how they address the immediate, they help address the immediate issues. You talked about 65 years as the average age of the farmer. You know, that means challenges with regards to literacy, and in that sense, how they help using technology, for example, to simplify information. I know, for instance, FAO, East Africa Grain Council, has different platforms looking at market information so that the farmers, you know, can very well also be able to access the relevant information that helps them deal with what they're currently faced with. One of the things I really appreciated, and I've worked in the region, I've worked across Africa, is when I travel to another country and I hear about mechanisms, ideas that have been developed in Kenya, you know, which are being replicated in other countries. And I always say, you know what, our youth are also a dividend we need to be able to take to scale in other countries. You know, how are they also informing best practice in other countries? So in as much as they're part of developing solutions locally, they're also part of developing solutions globally.
Indeed. I think the current situation in the tech world is very telling in terms of Kenya's advancement. Very many startups have been funding, you know, receiving funding in the past 2-3 years. This year, it has been, you know, it has been blowing up. Every other week we hear this one has received millions of dollars in funding. Now, for the agriculture sector, there are some developments that have come in. There's, I can't remember the name. There's one that links farmers in terms of vegetable vendors with the market. There's Kune Foods as well that just ensures that you're receiving food, you know, home-cooked food at a certain cost. So what is the space of taking advantage of the technology advancement in the country to leveraging on that in the agriculture sector? Winnie?
Thank you, Betty. Indeed, the opportunities to address some of these emerging trends for the youth is, the time is now for them to take up this space. And in addition to some of these platforms, the youth, I think a majority of the youth, if not all, have access to the digital platforms using their mobile phones. So we encourage the youth to not only use some of these social media platforms just for the social aspect, but they can monetize these social media platforms, items such as selling. So in FAO, we have a program for the youth that is addressing matters digital. So we try and build their capacities in terms of how do you utilize these digital tools to improve your business, to boost your business, because like we mentioned earlier, one of the greatest contributor to food waste is market access, the weak market linkages. But especially during COVID, that's when we saw the whole technology thing blow up. Everyone was selling online. So that really disrupted the market, but it also boosted the businesses in terms of linking the farmers and the producers directly to the market. So that we encourage the youth to take advantage of some of these programs we have and access to learn more about how to use the digital platforms. And you know, sometimes when you talk of tech, you think very big, but it's basic things such as having a proper Facebook page, having a WhatsApp business page. So using these tools, so we train them on content creation. So how good is your photo? What will make me buy your product on social media, not someone else? So these are some of the basic skills we are giving our youth to boost their businesses in the agri space. But we also have the very advanced technology that we are also trying to see how we can leverage on this technology, such as the market information systems, because that is now on another scale when it comes to technology application. Yes.
Abdi?
I think our youths when it comes to technology, all of them are really in it. But we need to direct them so that we find solutions to the practical issues that we have, at the community level. So I think the idea that you want to play big, you want to, deal with big companies like Safaricom we need to bring them back so that we tell them, look, let us start small and let us focus on food systems, let us focus on the food chain, let us focus on ensuring that we are food secure as a country. So I think we need to direct our youths in our institutions as organizations, as expert organizations like FAO, Oxfam, the humanitarian actors like ourselves, the ASAL humanitarian actors. We need to use this technology, we need to use these youths to find practical solutions to the food security issues that we have in our communities. So we need to direct these minds, these very innovative minds, to find practical solutions to the issues that are really affecting us at the community level.
So the minds are there, they're ready to be used.
Yes.
The technology is already here.
Yes.
Why are we not taking advantage of it? Irving?
I think for me what is interesting, especially as you reference startups, is if you dig deeper into those numbers of which startups have been funded, is what we are seeing very much as startups that are based in Kenya, based out of issues that you're facing in Kenya. But unfortunately, in terms of representation, many of them are actually for people from other countries, especially the global north. And one of the things in terms of discussions we've been having in Oxfam is, what is it that we need to do in terms of capacity building to make sure that our youth are able to present their ideas in an articulate manner, to sell their ideas in an articulate manner? We've got the brains, we've got the capacity, we are trying to challenge our education systems to be responsive to what you're dealing with locally. But part of it is also about presentation. How do we present our ideas in a manner that can then attract those funders to be able to support this idea? So I feel that that's a very important part of it, that we dig deeper into the numbers in terms of what our startups are doing, and also then invest in getting our youth, indeed, as Ahmed says, connected to the issues that we have seen. I think there are great initiatives in Kenya, the different innovation hubs that spend time, looking at, I think we've heard about boot camps where they say, let's spend time focusing on food solutions, focusing on water solutions. How do our youth help generate ideas? But also looking at incubation in terms of what type of resources would they need? Another part of it is resources. We tend to want to see the finished product. You want to see the end product, but it actually takes so much time to develop, whether it's prototypes, to develop, something that can be taken to some form of scale. Who is investing in that? We do hear great ideas, for instance, some companies such as Safaricom investing in this, but it actually needs to be something we take across the board, including our government. I know right now, I think there's a program with Ministry of Youth and UNICEF where they're looking at smart ideas coming from our youth, going to places, Turkana. It's not just the people who are in town, because that's where sometimes we're already creating inequality. By focusing on the places where they have computers, they have internet, I still speak to the fact that the inequality in the rural areas, the inequality in the arid areas, in the remote areas exists, and we must not leave them behind.
Okay. We are talking about matters agriculture, food waste, hunger, and how to manage what we have in the best way that we can. And in the National Assembly, the Agriculture Committee is engaging the Agriculture Ministry over the failure to subsidize fertilizer. Of course, we shall be talking about farm inputs a little bit later, but first, let's listen into that.
This is the time that farmers are supposed to be planting maize, and nobody's doing anything about it. We are talking about e-voucher. It is not going on. I have told you that's what's happening on the ground. We expect the Ministry of Agriculture to tell us what is happening. What is happening? Is it sabotage? Is it that people don't care about farmers in this country? Then we want to come out on record, because we were doing budget making, and the interesting thing is that our recommendations as a Committee of Agriculture or Departmental Committee of Agriculture was not listened to. Now we want to know, is budget making between budget committee and treasury? Or is it also that Minister of Agriculture should be involved? So we need to come out clearly. The law states clearly that whatever recommendations comes from the Committee of Agriculture should not be changed. Something again that is disturbing the Committee of Agriculture is the addendum. After we gave our recommendation, Ministry of Treasury brought up an addendum saying that they have made changes. They made changes according to what we had put aside for purposes of subsidizing fertilizer for Kenyans. So what we want to know is that, does also Treasury think that Kenyans can do without farmers? That is a question that we need an answer. We want the Ministry of Agriculture to come out clean. Are they with the farmers or they are with Treasury? We want Treasury to come out. Are we willing to help farmers or they are not willing? If they can subsidize fuel to the tune of 12 billion every month, what is so difficult to just do 30 billion for farmers once in 12 months? Where are we going wrong? It's time now we also request the president to intervene, because he sits in cabinet. We also not had anything from him. He needs to come out clearly and say, this is how we are going to help farmers. Farmers are desperate. Farmers are waiting. Farmers know there is a government. Why isn't the government protecting the farmers in this country? That is the question we are asking. We have done our part as a Committee of Agriculture, and we are going to be tabling our queries on how budget has operated, on how they've tabled yesterday in Parliament. And it was tabled in the evening. It was brought yesterday for approval or for Parliament to pass. But we raised our grievance and said we cannot pass the supplementary budget as it is unless we see farmers' money being put there or money for subsidy. Then we will know we are in the right track. Otherwise, we also want the Ministry of Agriculture to come out clear, because we are not going to go around in circles. You are the ones who are supposed to be protecting the farmers. Without the farmers, the Ministry of Agriculture should not be there. So we need to come out clearly, and we are not going to take these things lightly, because we want this thing to move or we stop everything. Yesterday in Parliament, I said clearly, it is either let Parliament, then let the Budget Office work with the Treasury and the Ministry, and forget about the committees, because we are not going to be there as rubber stamps, and we are not being heard. We are supposed to be getting the grievances from the people, bring it to Parliament, make laws that are going to help us. If we cannot put money, then where are we heading? I am on record saying that Kenyans, the budget, agriculture should be given at least minimum of 10%. As we stand, it is 3%, and nobody cares. Why can't they then come out and say, because of the challenges in agriculture, let us increase it to the 10%, then we are not going to bother anybody. Thank you. And I think the question is not answered well, and I'm sorry to say the ministry should come out clearly. Where is the problem? Who is not telling us the truth? What is happening in cabinet? Because every week cabinet is meeting. We want to get those responses so that we know what to do. I can see the other day, we were seeing yesterday in Parliament, Article 2 to 3, they've used Article 2 to 3 on things that are also not as important as food. Yes. Why can't it be used on food? Anyway, let me not talk. Yesterday I was very furious, but I am waiting to see what action is going to be happen on Tuesday. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for everybody. Thank you.
Is the Agriculture Committee of the National Assembly engaging the Agriculture Ministry on matters subsidization of fertilizer and just asking very important questions. DK Changwon on Facebook, you are saying government needs to assist farmers subsidize farm inputs like quality seeds, fertilizer, etc. because like maize and coffee farming, the cost of production is very high, yet the market price is very low. This is why majority of professional agricultural investors are moving to value addition, because they reap more than farming. Those are the views of DK Changwon, and I think we shall now delve into the cost of production in this country for farmers. Right now, the cost of fertilizer is going very high. The ministry said that it needed around 38 billion shillings to subsidize for farmers. According to the Treasury, the budget estimates it was about 3 billion shillings, and that means that there's quite a deficit and farmers will have to foot that. That goes into the cost of production. Let us talk about the cost of production and you know, the end product being quite expensive for the consumer. We will start with you, Winnie. What are your thoughts on that?
Indeed, the farmer, like I would go back to what our colleague said in the clip that has just been shared. The farmer is a critical player in the food system. Without the farmer, there is no food system, because when you look at the food system, the core value chain has the farmer, the processor, the transporters, the market, and then we have food waste recovery. So when it comes to the cost of production, it is indeed something that needs to be addressed in terms of buffering our farmers against high costs of production. But it doesn't just end at the high cost of production. We need to see how we can address this from economic sense, from an economic perspective. We mentioned earlier that a majority of our farmers are smallholder farmers. And when you look at agriculture, for us to now balance between cost of production and making profits, we need to look at economies of scale. So how do we now bring our smallholder farmers together to be able to access some of these inputs in large scale? Because when it is just one person accessing some of these inputs can be shared among farmers. So as FAO, we are very strong on aggregation in terms of bringing the farmers together, either to form groups or community-based organizations. Then it becomes easier for us to be able to help them, and it makes economic sense for you to invest in that particular area. And even going beyond production when it comes to linking our farmers to market, because some of the issues that affect production is also how are you able to make back your money? What are the profit margins? So when it comes to linking our farmers to the market, we are also very keen on aggregation, on skills, because it will only make economic sense for a private sector player to invest in transport systems, aggregation centers within the counties if there is enough skill to collect. Because as a private investor, I would want to come and collect whatever produce it is, whether it is bananas or fruits and vegetables that will fill a certain tonnage, so that the margins make sense for me to invest in that particular sector. So even as we look at the cost of production, we need to see how do we improve on the economic viability of some of these investments by bringing our farmers together for more economic sense to invest in this sector.
Paveen, your thoughts on that? Yeah, I think I'd like to take a step back in terms of even at the continental level, what we should be thinking about. If there's anything COVID taught us, is that we need to be looking at our own local markets, we need to be looking at our regional markets and how we work really to sustain, especially, the smallholder farmers, have sustainable food systems that are gender sensitive. When we look at the African Union Malabo Protocol, it talked about investment of at least 15%, of our government budgets, 10% to agriculture. Now, what are we doing around that? What is our accountability on that? We keep saying drought. We keep saying, at this point, we're even talking about the Ukraine crisis, that nearly 90% of East Africa's wheat supply is based on Ukraine and Russia supply. Now, what does that mean for us in terms of investing locally? That indeed we need to be looking at how we scaffold our farmers, how we provide social protection mechanisms, invest, if it's in terms of subsidy, in the local system enough to be able to look at a way we are sustaining ourselves. But of course, I want to recognize that the integration in terms of, there are certain parts which have more, there are those which have less, there are those which are better at certain products. So how do we work in a systematic manner? Yes.
Working in a systematic manner, very important. Abdi, if you have a comment on that, please, and tell us your experience in terms of collaboration, especially in the ASAL areas.
Yeah, I think I agree with the panelists that we have to subsidize our farmers. And this is global. It happens everywhere. So for us to talk about now fertilizer subsidy, high cost of production, this is really where the government has to come in a big way. If we are trying to sell in our local market, one corner of Kenya is trying to sell to the other corner, but you find food from other countries are cheaper. That doesn't really make sense. and it has everything to do with the inputs. So this is one area that we need to, we appreciate the effort that Parliament is making. This is one area that the government must really act on and do something about. So we need to bring down the cost of production. We have discussed how do we do the information system, the market information, distribution, transportation, storage and all that. But the inputs, the farm inputs, bringing down the cost of production is a very, very critical factor, and we must handle this as partners. One area that we have been working with, like now, as I've told you when we were introducing, the ASAL humanitarian network, first, is a network of local and national NGOs. And then this platform is working with international organizations like Oxfam, so that in terms of sharing information with the government, in terms of sharing information with the pastoralists, in terms of giving information to the small-scale farmer down there, then we synchronize our way of working. So, but one issue that has really been critical for us, and information that we have been passing on time and again, is the cost of production has to come down. Our government must must subsidize something like fertilizer, so that selling food from one corner to Kenya to another corner of Kenya is not more expensive than if food is brought from. If you look at the ASAL counties, especially the northeastern part, you find sugar is cheaper than the other parts of Kenya. Why? Because sugar comes from across.
Allow me, Abdi, to cut you short there. We shall be back on that point in a little bit, but we want to take you to a press conference by the government spokesperson, retired Colonel Cyrus Oguna, and he is speaking currently. Let's just listen into what he has to say.
Weaknesses that we must be able to address as a people or as a government, so that we can be able to provide good services to our people by working together, because we have got the same objective. The members of the press have got a target audience that they must be able to provide with content, with information. But at government, we have the information, but we don't have the voice to reach the targeted audience, which is the same for both of us. And therefore, that collaboration is key, so that we can be able to satisfy the needs of the same target audience that we have. So I want to again thank you for that collaboration, which has been very, very good over the years. Now for today, ladies and gentlemen, we have invited you here to talk about a very, very important event that is ahead of us, that the general elections, and the conduct and responsibility of our people. This is Kenyan society. And today, we're indeed privileged to have with us the National Police Service spokesperson, Bwana Bruno, who is well known to you. He'll be telling us a little bit about what the National Police Service is doing or plans to do to ensure that we cross that bridge tukiwa sote salama. We also have Madam Olive, who is communications person, Olive Metet from NCIC, who is also here as a communications person. And you know, we were also expecting to get a representative from the IBC, but for reasons that were beyond their control, they were not able to join with us. But maybe in the future, they will be able to join with us, so that we can all together, converse and discuss issues that are important to us, even as we head to general elections, as a people and as people who are united towards one common goal. But ladies and gentlemen, like I've already said, we are aware that the elections are only a few months away. Come 9th August, Kenyans will be presented with this democratic moment to choose the leaders and the government that they want. Such a moment comes only every 5 years. It is a moment in the past. It's a moment that in the past had been filled with anxiety, enthusiasm, panic for others, and even violence in some places. All the way from 1992, 1997, 2007, 2013, and even 2017, we have had to contend with electoral-related violence, hate speech, and other forms of intolerance. Tension and violence experienced most times as a product of incitement by leaders and, in some cases, the media. Judging by that past and common knowledge, such outcomes have come to define our elections. But collectively, we are saying, never again. Recognizing this reality and considering that Kenyans are desirous of peace during elections, relevant government departments and agencies have come together in a multi-agency setting to synergize in preparation and response to issues that may arise before, during, and possibly after elections in order to ensure a stable political situation that inspires confidence among our people prevails. Ladies and gentlemen, political contest is a democratic activity that is provided for in our Constitution, and it is a democratic right for every Kenyan to participate. Participation here implies one presenting himself or herself to the electorate for any seat and in any part of the country. Kenyans are free to vie for any seat within the Republic of Kenya, and they are also free to campaign and sell their policies and agenda anywhere, but within the law. Specifically, our Constitution 2010 grants all Kenyan citizens the freedom of speech. This freedom, however, has been misconstrued by others, very few though, to be freedom to spread hate, freedom to intimidate others, freedom to abuse, and freedom to make unprintable remarks. It is rather unfortunate that some of these insightful statements are made by none other than some of our leaders with little care to the impact of their utterances, more on the youth who look up to them for mentorship, for guidance, for direction. It is important to remind our leaders that they are expected to inspire, to encourage, and to build courage and resilience, not to build an environment of fear, panic, uncertainty within the society. We must all aspire to be responsible citizens, and it is demanded of us all to be mindful of others even as we enjoy our constitutionally guaranteed rights and freedoms. This is expected even more from a leader. Therefore, all called upon to shun hate speech and other forms of intolerance, particularly the youth who are advised to act responsibly and to avoid being used for selfish gains by politicians. By doing so, we shall preserve critical bonds that hold our society together and create an environment to facilitate more development. We are also aware that the media is equally critical in any democratic process. Used badly, it can be a divisive tool. Examples are many where the media has been deployed badly with grave consequences. We therefore urge members of the Fourth Estate to exercise their freedom of the press responsibly. Reporting should not be skewed in any manner that can lead to polarization. So we are asking the media to be very, very nonpartisan. We are also aware about how the internet, for instance, and other digital spaces have expanded capacities and opportunities for communication. This has inadvertently also extended the capacities and possibilities for hate speech and other forms of intolerance. Our appeal is for Kenyans to use the power of technology to promote tolerance and spread messages of peace, cohesion, and national unity. As government, we take this opportunity to urge for calmness, sobriety, and civility in the way we carry ourselves, even as we exercise our constitutionally guaranteed civil rights and civil and political rights. Let us not allow divisive politics and rhetoric to threaten our hard-fought economic and democratic gains. Elections come and go, but our country shall always remain. Let us protect it for the next generation. Let us also remind ourselves that peace and stability of our motherland, Kenya, is a responsibility bestowed upon us, upon the shoulders of each and every one of us, with the overarching motivation being to control what we can before trying to control what we cannot. To further amplify our resolve to holding peaceful and credible elections, we are pleased today to host the representatives from different aspects that manage, agencies that manage different aspects of elections. NCIC, for instance, is charged the responsibility to facilitate peaceful coexistence amongst different communities. As we head into elections, NCIC is advocating for violence-free elections with the motto, elections bila noma. Let us not allow divisive rhetoric to threaten our hard-fought economic gains. I think hapa kuna repeat, I'm sorry about that. NCIC continue to investigate incidences of hate speech. As of now, 51 cases are under different stages of investigation. These cases are from April last year to date. It's also important for Kenyans to understand that the NCIC has been carrying out campaigns to ensure that there is a free and fair election, that every Kenyan is aware about what they are supposed to be doing as we head into elections. There's also been collaborating with various stakeholders, including the National Police Service, Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, Office of the DPP, and Wiyano Platform for Peace. That has been going on. They have also been carrying out engagement at the community level so that Kenyans can be aware about what is expected of them even as we head into the elections. What happens many times is that these leaders who make hate speech, they do that because sometimes we encourage them as electorate to do that. We motivate them, we clap for them, and sometimes even look up to such statements. And we are saying that if we, the electorate, can be able to shout them out, can be able to tell them not to encourage in such kind of utterances, certainly they're going to stop. We're also asking Kenyans to take up this responsibility and tell these leaders to stop, because as a society, we must remain united. We have, like I said earlier on, elections come and go, but Kenya remains. It is important also for Kenya to understand that this is a collective responsibility and we must all be ready to tell leaders who are out to cause division in the country. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll come back a little later. It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Bruno Siosi from the National Police Service, the spokesperson, to say a few remarks before I come back with other remarks. Karibu Bwana Siosi.
That is the government spokesperson, the retired Colonel Cyrus Oguna, and he has been talking about election preparedness. He has, of course, warned that people who are speaking negative rhetoric in their political campaigns need to stop, because there is need for peace in the country, and NCIC is cracking down on the negative rhetoric speakers. Now in studio, we are having a conversation about food security, food waste management, as well as hunger management, and we just want to have our final thoughts here. We will start with, I'll start with you, Pavin. Give us your final thoughts, please.
No, thank you very much. I think I come into this space very much reflecting on where we are right now, and the dire situation that we are facing across the region. Like we mentioned earlier, 3.1 million people in Kenya who are at risk of extreme hunger levels, and we do need support in terms of food, water, cash assistance to them. We do have an appeal that has been put out by the UN of $139 million, currently only funded at 11%. We do need to find that immediate solution. But the other thing, as we have discussed today, is the fact that with climate change, we will continue to face this kind of crisis. So what are the systemic things we could be doing, both in terms of investment by the government, by different actors, especially those who are the drivers, as we call it, of the climate change in terms of carbon emissions, to look at addressing loss and damage in these countries, but also also investing in adaptation mechanisms, many of which we have discussed today. So that's my appeal to all of us. What we need to do now in terms of those who are heavily impacted and avert a major catastrophe, but also in the long term, what we need to do to have a systemic approach to dealing with the climate change impacts in the country.
A systemic approach to dealing with the issues in terms of climate change. Thank you very much. Winnie, your closing remarks?
Yes, I will just continue from where she left off when it comes to dealing with this in a systemic lens, because the situation we are facing is not simple, but we have been addressing it as simple, address this, fix this, this is the result. But we note that our food system is operating within an economic space and a social space. So we have social, cultural dynamics that are affecting us. And even just going to the elections, we don't know what some of these repercussions will have on our food system. So we need to really be aware of the space in which we are operating in. So I would call all of us to zoom in and to zoom out to understand that we all have a role to play within our food systems. My actions, your actions affect each other and come up with a totally different result. So the situation is both complex and complicated in that we need to really sit down together as actors within the food system to come up with wholesome and holistic interventions and solutions that are long-lasting, so that as we address the emergency response actions, we also build resilience against shocks and improve on our buffers, both locally and even globally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdi.
Yes, for me, on behalf of Relief, Reconstruction and Development Organization, and on behalf of the ASAL Humanitarian Network, which is a network of 30 local and national NGOs that are active in the ASAL counties. Our special appeal is, as we look at the longer term issues of climate change and food insecurity, we need an immediate response to the grave situation we have at the moment. 3.1 million people on the verge of extreme hunger, and that figure will go to 3.5 million in the next 1 month. So we need an immediate response. We have the international community with resources being mobilized by our international partners at 11% of that appeal. I'm appealing also to the government of Kenya to come in a big way, I'm appealing to all the county governments, in the ASAL counties, to coordinate with the national government and to coordinate with the partners that we have in those ASAL counties to ensure that we have an immediate response to the food situation. Because it will be a shame for this country if we start hearing deaths in the next 1 or 2 months. If people die, there is very high levels of malnutrition in the ASAL counties, in the 6 counties that are particularly severely affected, that are at emergency level at the moment. So we are appealing for an immediate response to the current food crisis in the ASAL counties.
Immediate response to the current food crisis in the ASAL counties. Well, that is the message here, and make sure that you are managing what you have in your house better. When you have leftovers, make better use of them. Do not throw them away. And also just don't let food go bad. That is your small way of helping solve this problem of food insecurity. Well, that is it for BizCheck this morning. My name is Betty Kiptum. Kurunzi Mashinani is coming up with Khalid Abdullahi. Please stay with Channel 1. Bye-bye.
Hujambo na karibu katika makala ya maisha kutoka BBC, makala yanayokusaidia kuiwajibikia afya yako tuliokuandalia wiki hii. Ni kiasi kipi cha pilipili kinatosha? Tutakuwa jikoni kukufahamisha kuhusu utumiaji